was out of content. So I just said, well, let me just Google North Korea, and we did an episode on the WWE's influence
Yeah.
in North Korea.
Yeah. Like the WWE, like
The World Wrestling Federation. Oh, do you not know this?
No, I don't actually.
The biggest WWE event in history was held in North Korea.
What?
Oh boy, I'm about to
gonna
take you
Google
down a
this.
rabbit hole. I'm
Hell
about to
yeah.
take that you down a rabbit hole. Oh, this is one of my favorite stories. Okay, before this, there was a WWE event that was used to save Japanese prisoners in Iraq before the Iraq-Kuwait War. So Saddam Hussein, it was used originally, and the same politician who did this from Japan, who's also known as Inoki, who's one of the most famous wrestlers in Japanese history.
I think I've got some footage from this that we're going to be playing while we talk about it. This is
Yep.
This is the WW, I guess WCW, I don't know.
WWE, well, WCW, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
WCW Collision in Korea in Pyongyang. Whoa. Okay, let's hear about it.
So let me explain what happened. So this was right after. This was the perfect collision, literally, to use the name. But so the original founder, Kim Il Sung, died like a few weeks before this happened. Inoki, who was a politician from Japan, who was also probably one of the most famous wrestlers, who also fought Muhammad Ali, for one example, and also organized, the wrestling match in Iraq during Saddam Hussein's rule to get Japanese prisoners back. So had a party called the War and Peace Party, and the War and Peace Party was basically, it was called the Sport and Politics Party, and basically the idea was.
Let my cat out real quick, but I can still hear you.
No problem. So the basic idea between the Sports and Politics Party was the idea that politics needs to be more like sports, where people are more respectful and honorable, and like losers will be fair and work with each other at the end of the day, and that's what politics should be like. And I think it was Sports and Peace Party because he also believed in like world peace and stuff like that. I found that goal very honorable.
Yeah,
and what he would do is hold what he called peace events around the world, where we're mass sporting events between countries with really large amounts of tension. To try to like loosen that tension.
Wow.
And he did this to success actually in Japan and Iraqi tensions by actually getting over 150 Japanese people who were going to be in military installations that were going to be bombed during the Kuwait War back home before they could be killed.
Wow.
By holding a massive wrestling event in Iraq. Now, this thing in Korea, he was in some scandal about something, and I forget what the scandal was about, but basically he wanted to get out of the scandal before re-election occurred. And so what he decided to do was called the WCW at a time where the WCW was trying to fight the WWF at the time. And this guy, who was the person who owned the WCW, was basically in a spot where he was like, I need to find something, some big event to get me over the WWF. Oh, they're always beating me. And so what they decided to do is Inoki called them up, said, hey, my politics ain't going too well right now. Your company's trying to juke out to WWF, so we need to host an event. And so his proposal was to hold a massive wrestling match in North Korea, because then he would be able to show the effectiveness of his position in his politics by loosening tensions between North Korea and Japan. And it would also help the WCW, because what's more going to get you more attention than holding a wrestling match in the most secretive country in the world? I mean, this was like the 90s, right?
Yeah.
This was, I think, this was like the 80s or 90s. One of the two.
It looks like somewhere in between. Yeah. Well, actually, no. The original Kim Jong Il, or Kim Jong Un.
Oh God! Now you made me forget his name.
Sorry,
Kim Il Sung. Yes.
He died in '94, so it would have been mid '90s.
Yeah. So, this was at a time where North Korea was actually more secretive than like probably ever in its history. Like this in the '90s, like right now you think it's secretive. It's nothing compared to what it was in the '90s. American tourists just couldn't get in the country. It was impossible. So they proposed this to North Korea, and on regular circumstances it would be rejected. But Kim Jong Il was just elected. Well, not elected, but gained power, and his father just died, and he needed to do something as a show of force to show he was serious, and this was going to be that. And so they all parties agreed, and it was going to be held in the country. And so what ended up happening is that they wanted to get the idea was this could be a massive propaganda event if they got the Ultra American to fight in North Korea. And so they called up Hulk Hogan. And of course, he said no. So what they actually ended up with,
Okay,
And
so
so
yeah.
what they ended up with was Ric Flair, who, in my opinion, is pretty cool too. Um, I mean, Ric Flair, he's pretty dope.
Yeah.
So they get Ric Flair, and if you ever seen like a picture of young Ric Flair,
No,
look up a picture of
I'll
young
pull
Ric
one up.
Flair, and then think American man, and it will be the exact same thing. Like what a stereotypical American is what Ric Flair looks like. And so they were going to get Ric Flair and Inoki to fight as the main event in North Korea. Now, what wasn't known is that Inoki's father was a very famous wrestler as well. And he was also extremely known in North Korea because that's actually where he was originally from Korea. And so the Kim dynasty during one of its like bad periods actually made his father into a North Korean icon. Right? Yeah, so
Wow.
you can see why he looks like an
Yeah.
American. Yeah. So into him like the North Korean icon, like because he would constantly defeat Americans because he was just like a good wrestler. And so when Inoki was brought out to fight Ric Flair, he would be seen as a North Korean, as he's representing North Korea,
Oh, I
right? And
see.
that was the thing that Inoki didn't tell anybody about beforehand, because every match before this, the crowd was silent, dead silent, of 190,000 people. It was an insane amount, over 300,000 on both events, both days. So, like for instance, there was like a dominatrix look from one wrestler fighting another female wrestler, which of course didn't really go over well with the crowd. There was these two massive men who fought, who were just known for being giants in wrestling, and that went over weird because they've never seen a person that big before in North Korea, for obvious reasons. Um, there also wasn't there. I think that actually might be the match right there with the big.
Yeah,
Oh, you,
I'm trying to
yeah.
skip around to find the matches in particular here.
Yeah, and that guy right there, by the way, that guy, the white guy in that footage,
Yeah.
the white big guy, he actually was recorded. He was calling home to his wife before the fight. This event, I know like everything about it. It's the greatest event in history. And he actually, his wife thought he was in Asia, like just like sleeping around, and he was trying to convince her like, this is North Korea. This is
Oh
not something
my
you do.
god.
And eventually, like when she wouldn't believe it, said, "You can't do that in this shithole over the phone." And the phone line went cut out, and then guards rushed into his room because you're not supposed to say that about North Korea, right? And so it was a risk of this dude getting shot in North Korea. And eventually he was just let go to fight this match the next day because this happened the day before, because they didn't want to risk the event and risk like an American being killed at this point.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
there could have easily ended in like a wrestler just being shot by the government
Oh
because he
my
called the
god.
country a shithole.
Oh my god.
And so eventually, like all these matches go through. And another problem that came with this is that most of these matches were Americans versus Japanese wrestlers. And the main reason why was because it was a Japanese company working with the
Yeah.
WCW, which was an American company. And so in North Korean like events, mass events like this,
Mm-hmm.
there's usually like a bad guy, right?
Hmm.
And a good guy, and you're supposed to root for one side, and while the other side gets defeated, vanquished, and brutal combat.
Sure.
Um, that wasn't a case here because it was the Japanese fighting Americans. They both were supposed to be bad, and before the event started, it literally showed like a one of those mass card things where the kids turn cards
Yeah.
of like America and Japan getting bombed,
Ah!
right? So it was like you didn't know who to root for.
Yeah, just so you folks understand what we're referencing, in North Korea, I think they did this in other communist states too, but in North Korea in particular, one of their big art forms is, crowds are given single colored like placards, and then they flip them over to make these massive patterns across like hundreds or thousands of people, and I guess a bunch of people in unison, made that pattern that looked like America and Japan getting bombed.
Yeah. And the thing is, of course, and to top it all off, what most people expected were like Greco-Roman style wrestling because that's what they're used to with like Olympic stuff, right? They're not used to the flashy style of wrestling, and nobody also knew it was fake because this is the first time anyone's ever seen proof of this type of wrestling in Korea. So I mean, in North Korea, so everybody thought that this was legitimately all real fights,
Wow.
right? So you can imagine right? This person who's going out finally when they
Mhm.
get to the main event, who's the son of apparently a North Korean hero
Yeah.
because he beat Americans in combat, and the most American looking American in history, Ric Flair, going into a match, and Ric Flair the whole time is acting like a cowardly bad guy, like going down like, oh, please don't hit me, turns around, like hits him in the back of the head. And the crowd for that fight, they got hyped. Like they were cheering, they were so excited to see their dude fight. They got angry when Ric Flair would do something cowardly. And for like a brief moment in time, they were legitimately enjoying a wrestling match in North Korea.
Oh man, that's crazy. And I think that's the one. Is that this one? This is Ric Flair, I think, right?
Uh, what? Sorry, I'm waiting for
Yeah,
it
I
to
know
catch
you're
up.
a little behind because of the streaming there,
Yes,
but
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Do you want to listen to a second of it or something?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. Let's listen to it.
let me put a second of this up here. Just so that folks can get a taste of this here.
Using professional wrestling to bring barbarian, only known as barbarian type American to North Korea. It's unheard of, and he's using professional wrestling as bridge of peace.
I don't hear
it's
it.
a great.
You what?
I can't hear it.
Oh, weird. Yeah, let's see.
Oh, 1 second. I didn't have it on. 1 second.
Oh,
There we
okay.
go.
All right.
Yeah, because I didn't have your stream
I
on.
think that Mr. Inoki is doing.
And that's one of the things I think we need to point out throughout Pyongyang, North Korea, which is a very big city, a very match because we want people to enjoy it. But I can tell you, only a few days later following this match, Ric Flair at the top of his game dominated Hiroshi Hase, who is certainly one of the top wrestlers in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I think Ric Flair really came into his own.
If they just had Ric Flair win,
Unfortunately,
pissed off everybody and
Ric
dipped.
Flair got back to the United States. The competition getting to him the way that it is, Ric Flair is.
Let's see some of these other matches. What kind of responses they got?
Hokuto with the win here in
One's
Korea.
really interesting is, of course, the dominatrix
Yeah, I think
match
back in those
because, you
days when
know,
Scott Norton-
North Korean women have never saw anything like that.
Yeah, I gotta find that, man.
You just went past it, I think.
Oh, was
They
it
had
the-
the blue hair. Yeah, blue hair.
Okay, I mean.
You were just back. It's right before the Giants fighting.
Okay, yeah. well,
Also,
okay.
Muhammad Ali was there too.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how they got him there. They just did.
Man, so this could have been a real cultural turning point for North Korea.
Possibly. I mean, if Kim Jong Il decided to have a different type of regime.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was anyway. It ended with Ric Flair losing. Of course, they could have had Ric Flair just beat him like that.
Yeah.
And it was seen as a huge success for the Kim dynasty because they had the biggest event in history. They could say it was the best in history, and they once again have vanquished the evil American, right? So it's perfect for propaganda purposes and all that stuff. And you can see in the footage like Ric Flair acting cowardly before like cheating and stuff like that. Anyway, but
that was a trip, man. I can't believe that. I'd never heard of that.
So how this ends for everybody is the WCW obviously didn't get much attention outside of the North Korea. Most people just didn't care. They just saw it, and the people who did like watch it saw it as some kind of weird sideshow. Kind of weird that you're doing it in this weird far off country that most Americans really don't know that much about. It's not really like it wasn't a big thing. And it wasn't even like the part where people were pissed about it, so it got attention. People weren't even angry. They just didn't care.
Wow.
And so the WCW eventually was bought by the WWF, and Inoki, just didn't really do what he intended. And he actually, it didn't really make him look good or bad. Nobody really cared. They just saw it as kind of weird.
Huh?
Yeah. And so he eventually, a few months later, lost his political position.
Well, it looks like it was a valiant effort on his part to be relevant. It could have been big, and it just fizzled out, I guess. But still,
Yeah.
what a story!
What a
Never
story.
guessed.
It's an incredible story. It's
Like Boom Rosa just said. Basically, Ric Flair and Dennis Rodman are the most iconic Americans in the eyes of the North Korean people.
basically, honestly, if Dennis Rodman and Ric Flair should have a fight in North Korea. You know how much that would? Oh my God! You know how that would be? Man, the forced attendance would be massive.
Oh man, that's a trip.
Yeah, and this isn't like WWE has always been weird with like when it comes to foreign policy because of the other Iraq is an example of that. Again, happening. Well, wrestling has been weird foreign policy, and there's
they did that Saudi Arabia thing recently.
oh yeah, they've done that twice now, and people like John Cena and I forgot the name of the other guy, but he's the guy who says yes a lot. Both actually refused to go to Saudi Arabia for the Crown Jewel event. But they had Goldberg and Undertaker for later events, so they were able to definitely get the attendance up. But another thing that people forget is, do you know who the Iron Sheik is?
Yes, actually, let me pull him up.
He was the most okay. So basically, the Iron Sheik, and I actually watched a really good documentary. Daniel Bryan was the guy who says yes, but the Iron Sheik was actually used to be the guard for the Shah of Iran.
Really?
Yeah. Most people don't know that he used to be the bodyguard for the Shah of Iran, and he was a big wrestling star in Iran. I mean, that's how he got the position. And eventually, he came to America because he left because he saw that the Shah was actually not that cool of a dude, and the Savak was killing a lot of people he knew. So he decided to dip. So it had not much to do with the 1979 revolution, if I remember correctly. And so he left. Came to America, and then when the revolution occurred, before that he was just doing normal characters, but someone got the idea of making him dress up like this Iranian to be the bad guy, to be the heel, and he was basically just a dude who came in and did to scary Middle Eastern music, go into ring, do the camel clutch, and he was at one point even heavyweight champion of the world. And he was a well-known dude. There was also the Russian dude, I forgot his name, but he would tag team with him too. So it'd be this Iranian and a Russian Soviet who would fight American icons. Eventually, later even, when, this kind of fell out of favor, I think actually it wasn't because it fell out of favor, it's because he was caught hanging out with one of the Americans at a bar or something.
Dude,
and then...
I think I may have some kind of clip here with the Iron Sheik and the Russian in one here. Let me see if this is the one. Let me play it real quick. It's like 16 seconds.
Oh yeah, they sung anthems and stuff together. It was great.
Russia #1, Iran #1, USA.
What a testament to our system that we managed to monetize that.
Yeah, it's something else, and he would, he'd do some weird. It'd be kind of weird though, because sometimes he'd say things about like the Jews as part of the character, but that was, and I don't know if that was because he actually believed it or it was because of part of the character. I think it was part of the character, but this WWE was never that sensitive to issues. For example, Sergeant Slaughter, for example.
No, I can't say I do. Although I'm gonna Google him now.
Sergeant Slaughter was this American archetype soldier who would fight the Sheik because USA. But and during these when Saddam Hussein invaded Iraq, he turned heel and actually became a Saddam Hussein supporter.
And he went Baghdad Bob.
Basically, and he decided, and he got like curled boots, and like he wore like the head, like the thing you see on like a lot of Saudi men, like the princes wear on his head, and he would wrestle with a Iraqi general, who was, I forgot what his name was, but it was ridiculous because it was right when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and you would think like that's a major like thing, but they just used it to sell more tickets.
That's so good.
Yeah.
What a trip, man. This stuff is man, I love little stories like that. That's so fascinating. I had no idea that happened in Saudi Arabia, and I totally forgot about the I read all about the Iron Sheik, man. It's fascinating. So
yeah.
Man, well, Dylan, it was fun chatting with you. Is there anything you'd like to? I've been plugging your channel all night while we've been chatting. Is there anything you'd like to share with everybody here?
Not much. Just my channel's Dylan Burns TV. I'd really appreciate if you guys went and checked it out. I do foreign policy content, and I'd like to thank everybody for the support because of recently some of the extra income I've gotten off Twitch. I've been able to go visit my girlfriend in Virginia. That was a really pleasant experience. And I just really appreciate all the support I've been constantly getting on my channel. And if you want to come out and check some foreign policy stuff or just play video games, it'd be wonderful, man.
Yeah, check it out, folks. The link is right there. Definitely worth a follow, worth your time. A lot of fun. Thanks again for your time, Dylan. Good to have you.
Good to have you too.